So if you're a fan of Bionicle, you may have heard of Gundam. If you haven't, they're kind of like Bionicles, except instead of building with them pieces, you have sheets of runners and you clip the parts off of. A lot more of a grown-up version of Bionicle in essence. This right here is an example of a Gundam. I don't really know the name. I don't really care about the anime. There's an anime, by the way. A lot of animes. I don't really watch it. Don't really care about it. I just like the models. We're going to be looking at Gundam figures to see how they can inspire your mock making and Bionicle figures. This one right here, I had one main thing I wanted to point out, and that was the use of pistons in the torso. Just adds some nice detail. Also, the posability is about the standard for other ones, whereas you have good amount of shoulder posing and twisting and everything. I think this one is not a good example. Oh, well, it kind of has a little bit of a double knee. But yeah, he is not a perfect example. I really just wanted to highlight the hydraulic pieces in the middle, or pistons. For this guy, there wasn't much I wanted to highlight. Again, there's some later ones that I have a lot more to highlight on, but he is not one of them. I wanted to mainly point out the fact he has a ball joint in his hip. It does allow for a good amount of posability. It's in a weird position, but it allows you to slot that. There we go, let some more light in. Slot this in, and now you have a full, really friction-based thing. You just gotta make sure you don't pull it out. But it also does give you a little bit of a subtle twist until you pull it out of the socket. But yeah, this one's not much to show, mostly just a hip. For this one, I figured pointing out the fact he has armor that can be taken on and off, which I'm not going to do all of it, just the shoulder. So he has a much smaller version inside, and then you put on the armor. And it allows for him to go much bigger of a figure, and it'll look a lot more menacing. You know, that's a pretty cool thing you could use to inspire a mock. This model kit right here is a very good example of what happens when you play with proportions. It creates some... I just pulled off his hand. Pop that back on. It allows you to create some interesting designs, like these massive chunky legs, compared with it, you know, smaller upper body. And then you got a massive minigun, which I think is a really cool design aesthetic. Big old guy, big minigun. Something I also wanted to highlight was the fact he has this cool, I don't really know exactly what it would be, like a weapon or a shield or something. I think you can collapse it into a shield that can be attached onto his arm somehow. I don't know. But yeah, having different accessories that can attach to their back or to their arm or really anywhere is a cool way to spice up your design a little bit. If it's a, let's say you have an all CCBS build, and if you give it some really cool accessories, you can make some really good looking mocks. Because that's the thing. It's not, a mock is never judged on one element. It's judged as a whole. So one element can really spice up your mock. Just saying. Anyways, another thing else I want to highlight was moving features. Having elements in the mock that can move and be posed, it just makes it so much more dynamic. Because you can always, it allows, every single articulation point allows for a slightly bit more posing. Sometimes there are a lot more posing. Sometimes moving the skirt just a little bit. But you'd be surprised at how much moving a skirt can add to the expression, the emotion of a mock. Think about your face. On the face, you have a ton, and I mean it when I say a ton, of muscles. Each one allows your face to shape a little bit, and these subtle differences create incredible changes in how we perceive what the person responds. So it's the same with just a skirt, or a toe, or a hand, or a finger, even. A slightly more straightened out finger will kind of convey the thing that they're either tensed up a little, or they're trying to convey that that's what they're looking at, that thing they're pointing at. Whereas if you have it directly, it's more, this is absolutely what I'm pointing at, where it's, you know, bent a little bit. It's more hesitant, or it's shocked. Now, back to looking at Gundams instead of facial structure. As I was saying, having things that can be put into different spots, it's just a cool way to change it up. And, you know, an arm-mounted cannon, or a shoulder-mounted cannon, you don't see it every day. It's not something, sorry, I get sick. It's not something you don't see, but it's something that you don't see in every mock. I think we should have a couple more arm-mounted cannons. Sorry, no, shoulder-mounted guns or whatever. Those are cool. For this one, I mainly wanted to highlight its simplicity. It's a beautiful Gundam, to be honest. It's clean, it's aesthetic, and it's not just because it's white armored, that's part of it, but just look at all the shaping. It's smooth, and when there are harsh angles, they're softened a little bit with a bevel or a curve. It's very flat, and it just makes a very clean looking thing. A very robotic feeling thing. I mean, robots can be at any design, but when I see something that's heavily greebled, yes, it seems robotic, but it's more mechanicalness, whereas this would feel more of a polished robot, something that's had years to develop. It's off topic of the Gundam, but when you're making a design, and you want to make it mechanical, or robotic rather, go for these more slightly angular, but you don't have to lean into it like a rectangle. You can polish it up a bit. You know, a robot is probably not going to be as smooth and organic as a human, but it will be very smooth, more plasticky in that nature. It's a little hard to explain.
Quick editor's note here, my sick brain thought this sounded so much more intelligent than it actually sounded. That was a lot of S's.
Also, I just want to point out the shield with a laser, just something cool, you know? Again, it's not something you see every day. Something I want to show about this guy is an interesting thing that happens when you move the knee. See how the parts shift and bend? It creates a really cool look, and if you have it from the front, it adds a whole nother level of mechanicalness to it. So that's something you could take inspiration from, is moving pieces in figures. Also, that's a cool shield. Just want to point that out. That is a cool shield. So I have two main things with this guy I want to point out. First up, he has tiny feet. This is a highly recommended to never do thing. Because you see, when you have small feet, it makes things almost impossible to stand up. Now, if you finesse it, sure, you can do it. Heck, this Moc right here, which was not inspired by my design. It was not my original design, although I didn't modify it. It has tiny feet, but yet it stands pretty well because of the fact of these, mainly. It's got these two heels and a decent surface to stand on. It's also a much thinner Moc, whereas this, it is essentially a line. See, that is much harder to pose than what I just showed. But that's not the main thing I want to show with this Moc. Also, I will say it does remind me of an early version of Telux with tiny little feet. Anyways, this Moc has a cool gun, right? You know, kind of Megatron-ish from Prime. But you think about this gun. First off, clips fall off all the time, which I hate. But as you see, it pulls off the thing. And you know, I was talking about how weapons moving is really cool? Yeah, it's like a little flower. And you can pull these out too. Little prong things. But what is that for? Well, prevents you lay stand. You then plug this into here and relatively stands on its own. Haha, pun intended. The wire is being an issue right now. You then plug this into the arm. And now you got a guy with a cord and the weapon. And I'm not posing this because I hate posing him, especially on this table. So this guy right here is technically not a Gundam figure. He's a thing called a 30-minute missions kit, which are kind of like little robotic soldier things. Anyways, and they're really cool. Made by Bandai, which is the same people who make the Gundam kits, but it doesn't matter. Main thing I wanted to show with these guys is articulation. And it's, I would say, outside of the arms, I would say it is the standard amount of articulation a Moc should have. You have, well, not exact points, but conceptually. You have a good amount of range in the ankle. You get a ball joint here and ankle pivot. So you can get anywhere you want, although this did fall off. It doesn't matter. You have a double jointed knee, which again, you don't have to have a double jointed knee, but it should have a good amount of posability. Full hip movement, that isn't really restricted. This is only being restricted because of the fact that this pulls out, so you have more movement. I'm just having a hard time demonstrating with my fingies and the focus. But yeah, see this little piece right there? It moves in and out. And then you have the ball joint on it, or not a peg joint. And this can also pose out. So again, good amount of hip joint, articulation. A little more zoom out. You have a full 360 of the waist. Doesn't have to be getting 360, but a lot of waist articulation. It can be bent forward pretty well, bent back. You get another articulation of pivot and another point of articulation in the middle. Your head is full range. It has a giggity-giggity-goo. If you want to have a giggity-giggity-goo, you don't have to. Arm can go up, down, pull out, forward, back. Across the chest is amazing if you can get your hand, if you can do that. If you can't, you can't. This is a really cool idea. You don't have to do that. You can accomplish that by making a ball joint here and not have one of those other example. Braxon. You can accomplish it by doing something like this, where it's not the newer style. Anyhow, he also has, I believe, double jointed elbow. No, he doesn't. Never mind. But yeah, this is a good example of articulation in a model. It should have the same amount of articulation, not the same amount of points of articulation, but the same amount of articulation. And if you don't, here's the thing to remember with Bionicle. You don't have to always follow the rules. You can break them on purpose. If you want a mock that's very stiff, don't give it a tons of articulation, but give it other ways to move, if you kind of get what I mean. Don't just make it static, is what I'm saying. Like, give it ways to express itself. Even in its, lack of posability per se, or stiffness, rather. Now this, in my opinion, is one of the best examples. No, this isn't even my opinion anymore. This is one of the best examples of posability you can ever see. And I'm going to show you why in 3 seconds. But first, I'm going to ask you to comment, what has been your favorite Gundam model in the video so far? Not based off Gundam per se, but based off how it could be used in a Bionicle model. Now, back onto this. Before I show you the posability, I want to do one little last thing. As you can see, these pop off, and there's other pieces of this that pop off. I'm not taking them all off, but it allows you to armor this character up. And it's a little hard to do on camera because I don't do it very often. But yeah, you can get the gist. They go on the figure all over the place. But it's a cool idea. If you want to take it. But again, you don't have to. None of these things in the video you have to do outside of posability. It should have a ton of posability in every model you make. There's different ways of doing posability, but your model shouldn't just be a statue. That's not... technically it's a Bionicle, but that's not a Bionicle. So as you can see, in the articulated hand... my chair's so squeaky. Can we get a focus? So as you can see in the hand, it's got full 360. That's good. It's got a thumb, which, hey, if you can get posable fingers, heck yeah. Which Gundams don't have, a lot of time have posable fingers, so that's a rarity. There we go, that's the focus. So, in the elbow, it has, you can move this around, which allows you to peg in the shield in different ways, or pose the shield in different ways. There's a sweet spot. You have this full amount of elbow. Then in here, right, as you can see right there, even more. So, double jointed elbow. Having such a hard time with this new camera. You have this armor sheet that can go up the shoulder, which I always recommend having your shoulder armor detached if you can get it away with it, because it allows you to move the shoulder in different ways without it being hindrance. Anyways, again, you don't have to. You can then pull this up all the way and twist it around here. Then you can twist, and you can move this down. Then you can twist this all around. Now here is the craziest part of this kit, which I'm going to struggle so much with focus trying to show you this. Let's pull the arm out. It's a peg, by the way. See how I'm able to wrestle this out of here? That is because you're not going to be able to really easily see it. But this is connected inside of here, giving it articulation this way. There's a peg right here connected into that, which gives articulation this way. And this then connects into a peg here, giving it this much articulation. Meaning, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 points of articulation in this part alone, which is absolutely insane. In any posable thing. That is insane amounts of posability. And it really can use it. It's not something that's like, oh, it's just there, but you don't ever use it. You will be able to use it. Especially if you're trying to get a pose with like the gun or whatever. That's when it really comes in handy. Now, that's not the only amount of articulation it has. Let's move these arms up. Get to the torso, okay? Move this up. Now, on the torso, you have a ball joint inside, so you can rotate a little bit right here. Up, down. Then you can pull this out and go forward with that. So you have all that. You also have a hinge inside of here. Let me pop that back in. This is similar to the, what is it, the RX something? Granddaddy Gundam I showed earlier. And you also, lastly, have this. So that's another 4 points of articulation in the waist. Now, here's more. There's more. Oh, there is so much more. Okay, the legs were pulled out. Okay, onto the hips. You have all this up. You have all that out, and you can still twist it like this. You then have... Oh, wait, no, sorry. This is... First off, you have moving pieces. Not a ton, but the yellow moves. There we go. Can we get in focus? But onto this. Okay. You have the first joint moving. Up to about there. Then the second joint takes in up to here. And then you have the third joint, which takes in up here. So you have 1, 2, 3 segments that move. I think. Maybe even before. Oh, wait, no. Wait, because... Yeah, it's 3. That's actually insane. That is insane. And it keeps going, because you have... On this... You can swing it back and forth. And you can pivot this. And then, oh, I don't know, the toes bend. Yeah. Which I will say, these are way too loose. You will try and pose it on the toe, and it just... So yeah. But other than that, this is one of the most solid models I've ever had. My pleasure of doing, which I haven't had a ton. I pretty much showed you all my models. But... This thing is insane. Highly recommended for either a first or your, current one or whatever you want to do. Buy this Gundam next. I'm dead serious. This should be your next Gundam, especially if you are a Bionicle Mocs at all. Because let me show you a little secret project I'm working on. Yeah, these are based off that model right there. Let me just show you a little hint of the articulation. I'm way too proud of this thing. If you can't tell. First up, it has the same amount of hip articulation, and it even pulls out like this. Like, you don't see normal models doing that, you know what I mean? On top of that, the legs have 1. Oh. I'm forgetting how the joint moves. 2, there we go. And 3. Joints. And if you watch this carefully, you may have noticed that, hey, oh shoot, that messed that up. Sorry, that piece is there and it bothered me a lot. I have frustrations with it. Okay, so if you watch it carefully, you will notice that, hey, that popped off because I didn't do that. Yeah, you have to move this, you move that, and then you're able to... What the heck? Is the joint stuck? Oh, there we go. I'm sorry, pardon me for 1 second. I'm just being an idiot. Okay, but yeah, if you watch from the front, the knee moves, or this moves a little bit, giving you a pretty cool look to the knee. Yeah, enough going on about this creation. Let's wrap up this video. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, looking at different Gundam model kits and how they could be used as Bionicle inspiration, why don't you check out this Bionicle Moc I made based off Gundams, right here. It doesn't have every principle I showed in this video, but it has some of the concepts, especially the double jointed knees. So check that video out, subscribe if you like, have a good day!